Some other rugby news that we just need to chat about briefly in the papers today. The rest of the press conference, the embargoed stuff from yesterday's team announcement suggests that Simon Zebo has a big future with Ireland. He's not going to be part of the squad for the 2 summer tests because he's obviously still involved with Racing and they've got games this weekend, and potentially after that as well if they beat La Rochelle. But it seemed that Andy Farrell was pretty effusive in his praise of Simon Zebo, his kicking game, his offloading, and the impact that he could have with Ireland.
Yeah, and this is going to be something that we're going to see over the next little while, that once he comes back into the fold at Munster, we're going to see Zebo again in the conversation for the back three. So that makes this a very important summer for someone like Robert Baloucoune, who will be getting his opportunity in a back three for Ireland, and to put that marker down before Zebo comes back in and to make things a little bit more complicated. It's also going to be very interesting down the line when we get to see Stockdale and Earls playing once again to see where they're at. I do think that the man in the back three who is safe as houses is Hugo Keenan, and he's not going anywhere. He's been a real breakout star for Ireland in those positions. I think as time has gone by, we've kind of like looked for the new and shiny thing, and maybe Keith Earls has always been the man who's overlooked in that regard and has still been the kind of dependable guy there and putting in really good performances pretty much all the time. So whether or not there's actually going to be an opening remains to be seen, but if Zebo's available, you got to take Zebo back. And as you say, he's been outstanding for Racing over the last little while, and you'd like to think that he'll bring that form back home as well. But Baloucoune is going to be the one. Baloucoune is the new and shiny thing with regards to that people are going to be really excited to see this summer. Yeah, and it's funny, these matches seem completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things when you're kind of looking at results. They absolutely don't matter. But if somebody does put in an amazing performance that catches the eyes of the coaches, that does everything that the coaches ask them to do, that improves on their club performance, then all of a sudden you can get into the team and not get out of it. That's the possibility here. While others are away, you suddenly nail down that position, you do everything, you become a coach's pet, and all of a sudden you're in the team. Like without question. And there are certain areas where that you can nudge yourself into the team and stay there. I think there are going to be other positions this summer where there's going to be an opportunity handed to you on a silver platter, and you just don't have to do too badly in order for you to take that opportunity. And I think that is the case when it comes to out half. Joey Carberry is probably going to start his first test for Ireland in just under 2 years. Yeah. When he plays this summer, I think August 2019 was the last time he started a game. With Craig Casey probably inside him? Yeah. I'm not sure about Casey, but I think with Carberry it's sort of, if you play well, you're our guy now for the next little while. Like Rory O'Connor has the stat that they've played 14 games in the Farrell era so far. There are 21 matches to go before the World Cup warm-ups. So you're edging towards a fairly significant point in this World Cup cycle, and Carberry, I'm sure Andy Farrell has in mind to be Ireland's starting 10 at the next World Cup. So this is a vital summer for him, because those 21 matches obviously dwindle this time next year, and if Sexton is still your #1 guy for the Six Nations next year, you can't blame the head coach for picking his best out half. So it's really important for Carberry to really make it a debate between himself and Sexton for the best fit starting out half in Irish rugby, in order for him to be a relatively seasoned test starter come the time of the World Cup. Obviously in that position as well, it'll be interesting to see how much of an opportunity Harry Byrne gets, because Ross Byrne, it seems, has been pushed back down the pecking order just a little bit on the national scene. Been so good for Leinster, but he's injured at the moment as well, so there's no opportunity for him to kind of get in even to camp and go, no, hang on a second, look how amazing I am when we're doing all these drills. And Billy Burns as well, obviously been kind of out of the picture as well. So this is Harry's time now. I do think that when the opportunity comes around next year, what we're hearing from Leinster is that obviously Harry Byrne is so highly thought of, but when we see the actual team selection and when it came to really important moments in this year's campaign, Ross Byrne was obviously picked. Now Harry Byrne had his injury troubles as well during this season at really unfortunate times for him. It felt certainly when it came to the international scene, but this is his opportunity now if he is going to get a bit of a look in, and maybe they're looking at Byrne and maybe they're looking at Carberry as a two that they want to take from this squad. I've always said it though, I do think that Ross Byrne is the one that maybe people overlook a little bit, and he'll obviously still be of an age profile to be right at his peak when Sexton does depart the scene, so he's not going to be going anywhere. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Billy Burns over the next little while, but you do have 3 young out-halves there who are, well, 2 young out-halves and one maybe a little bit older, who are ready to kind of step into the void over the next little while. So I think you were making the point yesterday that it's a shame that it's not a full summer tour. to have.
It's a disaster, really. Like, not a disaster. Obviously, not a disaster in sport, but you know, from like the excitement that we might have with seeing Caelan Doris, Gavin Coombs, Ryan Baird all in the same team with Joey Carberry playing 3 tests against the Islanders. Like, that would have been brilliant.
Yeah, and like, I mean, when it comes to these line summers as well, quite often what you see is a future line making their mark in the Ireland team. It's just, it opens up so many opportunities. There's maybe less of a pressure situation as well, given all eyes are kind of on the other on another rugby team in those sort of summers. So they'd be kind of like, I mean, when it comes to those who are actually kind of stalwarts of the team, and like, it's a big summer as well for the likes of Ringrose and James Ryan, just to show that they're the new leadership group of this team, and to kind of right the wrongs of what might have happened during the season. And then, of course, everybody's going to be talking about Gavin Coombs, who has quickly been, I guess, fast-tracked into a level of importance when we're talking about the future of this Ireland team. And that is obviously as a result of CJ Stander, because I think even before the retirement news, I think there was a hope that Stander might have been around for the next World Cup, or like, that might have been ambitious. So
no, I don't think so. I think that's right. I think that certainly in everybody's head, this contract that he would have got at the end of this year would have taken him up to the next World Cup, and he would have been around the squad, like potentially a 6 as Caelan Doris became the 8, but potentially the bench player. And what a brilliant bench player that would have been, somebody with 70 caps coming off the bench in the World Cup, who you absolutely know is going to or in those group games, like, you know, definitely had a big role to play, I think. But all of a sudden, the opportunity knocks for Gavin Coombs, and I think the Munster under-20 captain is in the paper today as well. Sorry, the Ireland under-20 captain is a Munster back rower, who is another number 8 coming through as well. So that production line is there. It's just that the time between now and the World Cup is limited.
A Coombs, Van der Fleer, maybe Caelan Doris back line or back row is.
Well, Peter O'Mahony's in the squad.
Well, there you go.
He wasn't rested. That's interesting, isn't it? It's like they're like, look, this is the competition for you, and we want to see. And obviously, the leadership that you get from Peter O'Mahony in a situation like this, you know, that those intangibles that we never actually see, but you certainly hear about. That O'Mahony brings that intensity and just that experience. Like, he's a Lions captain. Test series Lions captain who's going to be around that squad, so no better way to get an introduction to the Ireland setup for those new caps than being hammered by Peter O'Mahony in training at some point.
Yeah, and like, I mean, he's obviously going to be the kind of the actual leader there, and there's going to be so many other players who are going to need to step up in and around that. Like, if we talk about some of the names that were always going to be going on the lines, like Robbie Henshaw is one of those names, for example. Tadhg Beirne would be another one. I think it's pretty clear who the wannabe Tadhg Beirnes are, for lack of a better phrase, in the Ireland camp. But when it comes to the wannabe Robbie Henshaws, like, I think we've become so ingrained in the 4 names that we've had in Ireland's midfield over the last little while, where it's been Henshaw and Ringrose, and if it's not those two, then Aki comes in, and if it's not him, then it's going to be Farrell, and that's it. That I just wonder, maybe, is there a lack of depth developing there? So this could be a big summer for someone like Stuart McCluskey, maybe, as well, who might get a few minutes beside Gary Ringrose. So, like, obviously having 4 midfielders is all you generally need, and Ireland have generally only needed the 4. It's only been in very extreme scenarios where they've had to dip down below that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be a bad thing to start realising what is option 5 and what is option 6, because there's no way that your 4 will always be the 4 in form.
Look, while Robbie Henshaw was on there, I was saying, is there any way that Robbie Henshaw could ever play in the wing for Ireland, that you'd have, say against South Africa, or say, I don't know, against France or against England, for example, that you want your beef in the middle, and you've got Chris Farrell and Bundy Aki, and on the wing you've got Robbie Henshaw. Like, I'd love to just see this happen in tests and see what it looks like, because on the same side of that, right, there are other games where you'd like to see what would happen if you had a 10 and a 12, and the 12 was actually a 10, and in this instance Joey Carberry is the person. Imagine having that creativity, but that kicking ability, and that ability to drop the shoulder. Like, from a defensive perspective, if on their set piece you decide that you put your winger as the #1 defender, I don't know, there must be some ways to do this, that, like, just let's see what this looks like. But as you keep saying, there's only 20 games between now and the World Cup.
When you listen to Henshaw speak there about, I guess, the difference between 12 and 13, I mean, he does fairly define it quite well, actually. There is obviously a clear difference in the roles expected of the 12 and the 13. But in reality, it does seem as if those lines are blurring quite a bit between those two positions, and that there is just a general skill set, and it's all about your positional awareness. That it does seem that the transition to another role in the back line looks more possible than it would have been 10 years ago when it comes to rugby. We've seen obviously the interchange between 10 and 12 so often now in so many different teams, the interchange between 10 and 15. The wings seem to be the separate thing, except if you're Kieran Marmion, of course, playing on the wing against Australia at that one time.
Yeah.
But that's like it could be something worth exploring. Like Ireland's back three, as we were saying, there's a few really exciting options there, a few tried and trusted options there who haven't really put a foot wrong just yet. But I don't know. I think 21 games is still like a nice room for experimentation.
It is plenty. Just one last point as well. So Jack Conan and Tadhg Beirne come back from the Lions, having won a Test series, nailed down positions as starting lines, and then come back and find themselves kicked out of the Ireland team. Like that's the level of competition we have in the back row at the moment. Where, you know, if I mean, Caelan Doris is going to be our starting 8 if he's fully fit and back to form, right? And then after that, all of a sudden, it's like, well, you know, maybe there's not that much room left for those two there's a scenario there that's not beyond the bounds of possibility. If you want to comment on that, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. A reminder, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead.